Hey everyone, I'm your host Adrian. We do content like this weekly, so hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified. If you want more content like this, click the like button and please leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. Welcome everybody to today's Rupa Live class presented by Rupa University, the best way to learn about specialty lab work from industry experts. My name is Adrian Martinez and I will be your host for this afternoon. Today we have a very, very special guest in Dr. Aristo Vojdani here with Immunosciences Lab. And he's going to walk us through how to use the Autoimmune Viral Trio for long COVID. Before jumping in, a couple of quick housekeeping items. Everyone joining will be muted by default, but don't fret. If you have any questions for Dr. Vojdani, go ahead and use that Q&A button down in your menu bar, and we'll be sure to ask at the end of the presentation during a live Q&A session. Immediately following the Q&A, yours truly will show you exactly how to order these tests on Rupa Health. And if you have to jump early, no worries at all. We are recording this session, and we'll always distribute it the following week once our team has had the opportunity to edit the video along with the slides, of course. And finally, if you are a fan of this type of content, be sure to check out rupauniversity.com to get access to all the previous sessions that we have done, including those with Dr. Vojdani. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Aristo Vojdani. Dr. Vojdani is known as the father of functional immunology, an award-winning clinical lab scientist with more than 50 years of experience in the research and clinical immunology laboratories. He is the technical director of Immunosciences Lab, chief science advisor for Cyrex Labs, another amazing partner of Rupa Health, and a clinical professor in the Department of Preventive Medicine at Loma Linda University. He has published more than 200 articles in scientific journals and has written 2 different books. Among his many awards include the Herbert J. Wrinkle Award, the Linus Pauling PhD Award, and the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute Lifetime Achievement Award. Always great to see you, Dr. Vojdani. Thank you so much for joining us today. I will go ahead and let you take it from here.
Thank you, Adrian, for your kind introduction, and thank you, Rupa. So today, ladies and gentlemen, together, we are going to learn how to use the Autoimmune Viral Trio for long COVID. So the long COVID panel is combination of the viral trio, SARS-CoV-2 antibodies against spike and nucleoprotein, Epstein-Barr virus, 5 major determination. I emphasize that because not many laboratories are doing, for example, early antigen. It is very, very important to order the EBV panel from a laboratory which for sure is going to include the early antigen, because positivity of early antigen indicates viral reactivation. And so there are 5 major items we test for Epstein-Barr, human herpes type 6, IgG and IgM. And again, it is very important not only to do the IgG and IgM, but to use a laboratory which they have the right cutoff points where they will give you can differentiate between real positives versus real negatives. So example, I know that major laboratories who are doing herpes type 6, they report IgG positive in 96% of the cases. That is not acceptable. So in our laboratory, we did validation of reference ranges in such a way, using many, many samples, more than 500, representing different parts of the country. And we report only IgG positivity in about 15 to 25%, not higher than that. So if IgG is elevated in our test, that indicates viral reactivation. And of course, IgM is indication of ongoing viral infection. Because these 3 viruses are known to induce autoimmunity, SARS-CoV-2, EBV, and HHV6, we have to do also autoimmune profile that includes anti-nuclear antibody, extractable nuclear antigen, double-stranded RNA, rheumatoid factor, C1q immune complexes, actin or smooth muscle antibody, and mitochondrial antibodies. You may think that the many laboratories are doing, the major laboratories doing this basic panel. Yes, they may do that, but do not include C1q immune complexes. In some laboratories, they charge for C1q immune complexes more than our total panel that I'm representing or presenting in here. So it is important to include C1q immune complexes because it's a major factor for determination, ongoing inflammation, and possible autoimmunity. So altogether, the viral trio, SARS-CoV-2 antibody, EBV antibodies, human herpes type 6, plus autoimmune profile comprehensive panel, we call that long COVID panel. It's highly recommended, and the cost for that is $490. So with that introduction, let's go to the science behind this panel. So in about few months ago, after reviewing probably more than 500 different articles in scientific journals, I put together this article, which was published in Viruses a few months ago. It's an open access. You can download this article and please read this article. If you are interested in long COVID, you have to read this article. So persistent SARS-CoV-2 infection, Epstein-Barr virus, HHV6, and other factors may contribute to inflammation and autoimmunity in long COVID. So I'm going to show you more slides in regards to this article. So we propose that measurements of IgG and IgM antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, EBV, HHV6, viral superantigens, I'll talk about that, gut microbiome disturbance in long COVID, and biomarkers of autoimmunity are important in understanding the causes, or to find the causes of long COVID. And based on that, you'll be able, hopefully, to manage this multifactorial disorder, which we call it long COVID, which has a significant overlap with a disorder which I became familiar with almost 30 years ago. And the name was, at that time, chronic fatigue fibromyalgia. Now the name was changed a few years ago. They changed the name to myalgic encephalomyelitis. So why am I adding this slide? Because many years ago, in 1999, I published this article in Journal of Internal Medicine that we found high rate of apoptosis of white blood cells and cell cycle in patients with chronic fatigue fibromyalgia. When the article was published, a professor from Italy by name of Dr. Bascetti wrote a letter to the editor saying that chronic fatigue actually is abnormality of adrenal gland. So in response to that, I wrote, there is no such thing that a single etiologic agent will be responsible for chronic fatigue. And chronic fatigue is multifactorial disorder, and therefore multifactorial disorder could not be diagnosed by a single blood test and could not be treated by a single medication. And today I'm going to repeat that in relation to long COVID. So in long COVID, as you can see in here, there are multiple factors, multiple early factors participate in long COVID. And according to CDC, there are probably up to 200 symptoms appear in different patients, in different combinations, in different patients with long COVID. But these are just some of the most important ones that you can see in here. Shortness of breath, memory loss, fatigue, of course, anosmia, GI distress, autoimmune reactivity, and possibly, if we'll not take care of that, autoimmune disease and many others. So the summary of the article that I just shared with you, in that article, which is in this slide, in that article, I emphasized the involvement of these 5 major factors in long COVID. Number 1, viral persistence. And I'm going to talk about each one of these separately. Meaning, we get COVID, after 3 months, still we do not feel good. And the main reason for that is either the virus or the remnant of the virus still are in the lungs or in the gut, especially, and from the gut may manage also to get to the brain through breakdown in blood-brain barriers. So that is viral persistence. So the virus will not go away after 90 days and will stay in the body probably for many, many years. Reactivation of latent viruses, particularly EBV and HHV6, we'll talk about that. Viral superantigen that can activate the immune system, play a role in long COVID, disturbance in the gut microbiota, release of bacterial toxins, damage to the gut and blood-brain barriers play a significant role in long COVID. And finally, multi-tissue damage, immune disorder, autoimmunity, and neuroautoimmunity. I'm sure some of you have seen the article which was published last month in Scientific American that emphasized that long COVID is in the brain. But here I'm telling you that long COVID, yes, could be in the brain, but starts in the lungs, goes to the gut, through breakdown in the gut and blood-brain barriers, get into the brain, and therefore may induce neuroautoimmunity. So those are the 5 major factors. But there are also some other factors playing a role, and some of those we have in here: obesity, type 2 diabetes, hyperactivation of the immune system, and the rest we did talk about. So now let's talk about viral persistence. I already explained either the virus or remnant of the virus stay in the body more than 3 months and then cause activation of the immune system, and the activation of the immune system may result in inflammation and autoimmunity. So to support each part of these 5 major factors, I include a couple articles in order to show you that everything is science-based. And these are some of the articles who support that, like this article that I'm sharing with you from PLOS Biology 2022. Why does viral RNA sometimes persist after recovery from acute infections? Obviously, it has to do something with our immune system. The immune system, if it's weak, will not be able to get rid of the virus or remnant of the virus, including the viral R. So that's one. And the second part was about reactivation of latent viruses, such as EBV. You'll see in about 60% of the cases, HHV6 in about 25% of the cases, CMV about 20% of the cases. One of these or all of these may contribute, plus SARS-CoV-2 may contribute to long COVID. So Epstein-Barr virus, as you know, herpes viruses are classified from herpes type 1 to herpes type 6. And EBV is herpes type 4. We are familiar with Epstein-Barr virus in relation to mononucleosis. It is called also the kissing disease. So mononucleosis, which results in IgM first and then IgG antibodies against viral capsid antigens. And following the acute phase, the virus persists mainly in epithelial cells and B lymphocytes, the same B lymphocytes which are responsible for manufacturing of the antibodies. Now the virus such as EBV and later on you'll see HHV6 can hide in our B cells, and then when our immune system for some reason is not working properly, they become reactivated and cause lots of abnormalities in the immune system, and probably after a few years may result in autoimmune disorders that you can see some of them in this beautiful flower and with these petals that I'm presenting to you. For example, yes, we know EBV is involved in inflammatory bowel disease, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, particularly multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, polyneuropathy, thyroid autoimmunity, celiac disease, and autoimmune liver disease. And this virus is so important that in the last International Congress of Autoimmunity that I participated last year in Athens, there were several presentations about making vaccines against Epstein-Barr virus in order to prevent autoimmunities in the future. So yes, EBV contributes significantly to SARS-CoV, to long COVID, and also to many autoimmune disorders. So it is important in a very simple graphics to understand how EBV infects our cells. So Epstein-Barr virus, these are epithelial cells, probably after kissing or other activities. The virus can infect our epithelial cells. From epithelial cells of the mouth can get to tonsils, for example. From there to regional lymph nodes, where it can get into the B cells. And then when the virus get into the B cells become blast. They divide, they become transformed, and then communicate with T cells, and the T cells become primed against the Epstein-Barr virus. So the Epstein-Barr virus with a strong immune reaction can keep the virus inside the B cells, and we call that latency, meaning the virus is inside the B cell. This can take weeks, months, and years. Nothing will happen. But as you can see here, due to stress, other pathogens, for example, HHV6 comes along, CMV comes along. In general, exposure to toxic chemicals, I call that in general. All the environmental factors, the exposome, can cause reactivation, and the virus will divide inside the B cells from 1 becomes 2, 4, 6, 8, and so forth. And finally, there are so many viruses, EBV, inside the B cell, causes the lysis of the B cell and then spread and infect additional epithelial cells and possibly additional tissues all over the body. And so that's why I emphasized when we measure antibodies against Epstein-Barr virus, we have to measure also IgG antibodies against early antigen, because that early antigen appear when the virus divides and spreads into additional tissue components. So that's the mechanism. So now let's look at how much Epstein-Barr virus participates in long COVID. So this is an article published in 2021 in journal called Pathogens, and you'll see that Epstein-Barr virus, through very specific mechanism, can enhance infectivity of SARS-CoV-2. Now, I'll show that a little bit later, but let's go through contribution of HHV6, almost very similar to the same mechanism, HHV6, which we get infected like EBV during the first 3 years of age, stays in our B cells, and then when immune system is not working properly, they become reactivated, and then after reactivation can spread. So HHV6 also participate in many autoimmune disorders, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue fibromyalgia, lupus, Sjogren's syndrome, collagen vascular disease, encephalitis, epilepsy, thyroid autoimmunity, Guillain-Barré syndrome, multiple sclerosis. By the way, you see a lot of overlap between autoimmunities induced by EBV versus HHV6. And so that's why it is important to measure IgG and IgM antibodies against HHV6 as well. So in this very simple cartoon, let's review one more time. EBV and HHV6, primary infection, the virus penetrates host cells, replicates itself, and releases viral particles through lysis of the host cells, and then stays in the body for weeks or months or years, and inside the B cells, inside the epithelial cells. But something happened to the immune system, immune suppression, UV, stress, and many more causes lytic reactivation due to some of these factors, and then the virus will divide and spread all over the tissue and the body. So this is, again, simple way of describing how much EBV and HHV6 contribute to long COVID, and this is an article to support that. Herpes virus infections and post-COVID-19 manifestations, and clearly show that EBV reactivation and HHV6 reactivation contributes to various pathologies in long COVID, and including, if we will not take care of that, this may result in autoimmunities such as rheumatoid arthritis. So now in this article, they show us the mechanisms, how EBV and HHV6 enhance entry of SARS-CoV-2 into different cells by enhancing ACE2 receptor expression. So here we see that SARS-CoV-2 with the spike proteins, but SARS-CoV-2 when binds to ACE2 receptor, there is no complete match between the hand and the glove. So there is some binding of SARS-CoV-2 to ACE2 receptor, and that SARS-CoV-2 may enter into the epithelial cell or may not enter into the epithelial cell. Now look at the next slide. The EBV comes along, changes the structure of ACE2 receptor, and 4 out of 5 spike structures fits with ACE2 receptor. Now in the next slide, HHV6 comes along. Now there is complete fit between SARS-CoV-2 spike protein and ACE2 receptor, meaning the hand and the gloves match 100%. And now the SARS-CoV-2 can penetrate into the epithelial cells, and then from there may spread in different tissues. From the lung may go into the gut, and from the gut may enter into the brain. So yes, we see collaboration between EBV, HHV6, and SARS-CoV-2 contribute significantly to the pathophysiology of long COVID. So as far as laboratory testing, you have a choice just to do the viral trio, which is SARS-CoV-2 spike and nucleoprotein antibody, Epstein-Barr virus, and HHV6, or in combination with autoimmune panel, which will be my last slide. I already showed that slide to you in my first part of the talk. Now, superantigens are a class of antigens that produced by some pathogenic viruses and bacteria, and as a defense mechanisms against the immune system. They try to hide from the immune system. The viruses and bacteria, when try to hide from the immune system, express superantigens. But because superantigens have some kind of similarity or mimicry with human tissue, when we make antibody against, for example, superantigen of SARS-CoV-2 or superantigen of EBV, HHV6, bacteria such as Staphylococcus toxin, then those antibodies cross-react with human tissue may result in autoimmunity. So persistent SARS-CoV-2 infections contribute to long COVID through the viral superantigen. So the virus superantigen could overstimulate our anti-immune responses and thereby induce negative feedback loop that paradoxically allows the viral persistence. So the immune system is busy to take care of the superantigen, and in the meantime, the virus spreads in different tissues. The next item, which is very, very important, and there are many articles in different journals about disturbance in the gut microbiome in long COVID. And as you know, disturbance in the gut microbiome, leaky gut, may contribute to autoimmunity, in this case, autoimmunity associated with long COVID. Article to support that. Gut microbiota dynamics in a prospective cohort of patients with post-acute COVID-19 syndrome. And there is no doubt that there is alteration in the gut microbiome, maybe due to viral persistence in the gut, and therefore damaging the gut structure and the gut barriers and the gut tissues by changing the gut microbiome as well. So gut microbiome alteration plus viral persistence may contribute to breakdown in the gut and later on in blood-brain barriers. So in the same article, it was shown that the good bacteria, which are here, the good bacteria, they are depleted. We have less good bacteria. I'm not going to read all of this, but we have more of the bad bacteria, including Enterobacter, such as E. coli, Salmonella, and so forth, Candida albicans, and by the way, Aspergillus as well in the gut. So less of the good bacteria, more of the bad bacteria in a case of long COVID. That's why we have to pay attention also the integrity of the gut in patients with long COVID. The next step is, if all that will happen, the end result may be autoimmunity, but there are many stages in autoimmunity, as you can see in here. The green is healthy. We test a blood of a patient. We go through their symptomatologies. we don't find anything wrong with the patient, with that individual, which is healthy. Stage 1 autoimmunity, or we call it silent autoimmunity or pre-autoimmunity, we find some elevation in antibodies, but rheumatologists may consider that as not being significant because the patients do not have major symptoms and not loss of functionality. Stage 2 autoimmunity, we call that autoimmune reactivity, elevated antibodies, more antibodies with symptoms and loss of function, but these loss of functions are not that much that to result in severe destruction of the tissue associated with the disease. And finally, stage 3 is antibodies are very elevated, significant symptoms and signs, laboratory abnormalities, imaging, and special studies associated with significant loss of functionality. And ladies and gentlemen, it is late to detect your patient at stage 3. At least we have to detect some of these abnormalities at stage 2, which is, we call that autoimmune reactivity. And by finding the triggers and removing the triggers, hopefully you'll be able to prevent progression of stage 2 to stage 3 full-blown autoimmune disease. So now you see that from the title of this article that autoimmunity is hallmark of post-COVID syndrome. And in fact, they are showing that autoimmunity may happen in 83% of patients with long COVID. Polyautoimmunity, meaning more than one autoimmune disease. Celiac disease, thyroid autoimmunity, rheumatoid arthritis, together we call that polyautoimmunity in 62% of the cases with long COVID. So that's why I really, from the bottom of my heart, I have to emphasize not only to do the viral trio, looking at SARS-CoV-2 antibody, Epstein-Barr virus antibody, herpes type 6 antibody, but to do the basic panel for autoimmunity that includes not only ANA, ENA, and so forth, but also total immune complexes. So 83% of patients with post-COVID may have autoimmunity, 62% may develop polyautoimmunity if we'll not take care of them. And also this article emphasizing importance of vaccines in long COVID. So this article supports that, yes, rheumatologists must be alert to the development of these autoimmune disorders and investigate the relationship between autoimmune inflammatory symptoms and its relationship to vaccination. This may be very rare, but it is possible, as you can see in this article. And another article about long COVID from rheumatology perspective. And in this particular case, they found elevation in anti-nuclear antibody, anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibody, anti-beta-2 glycoprotein antibody, CCP antibodies, and many other antibodies. And so therefore, we have to look at the autoimmune panel one more time. So this is the autoimmune panel. One more time, I'm showing it to you. Anti-nuclear antibody, extractable nuclear antibody, double-stranded DNA antibody, rheumatoid factor, immune complexes, actin and mitochondrial antibodies. And very quick, I'm just going to show you what is anti-nuclear antibodies, and that is antibody made against our nuclear components that you can see in here. The cell completely is stained with green. It's found in many autoimmune disorders, and it is the best screening for autoimmune disease. In some patients, as you can see in here, that the nuclear component of the cell is being stained, or nucleolar components of the cell is being stained in green. That is called extractable nuclear antigen. Also, this antibody is found in many autoimmune disorders. Double-stranded DNA antibody, and this is a unicellular organism that gets stained with human serum containing anti-double-stranded DNA, and you can see how beautifully the nucleus of this unicellular microorganism being stained with the serum of the patient with systemic lupus erythematosus. And also it's found in many other autoimmune disorders. Rheumatoid factor, what is rheumatoid factor? It is our IgM produced against our own aggregated IgG. What can aggregate our own IgG? In this example, we showed that lectins and agglutinin can do that, but aluminum can do the same thing. So meaning many exposome environmental factors can aggregate our IgG, and now our own IgM goes after the IgG, and then that becomes rheumatoid factor, which is elevated in patient with rheumatoid arthritis and possibly in some patient with osteoarthritis. Smooth muscle antibody, you see the green part of the cell, this is smooth muscle cell stained significantly with the blood of patient with primary biliary cirrhosis, and the same thing with autoimmune hepatitis or even chronic active hepatitis. And finally, mitochondrial antibodies, these are mitochondrial stained in green that is found in many patients with, again, primary biliary cirrhosis. Also, certain chemical xenobiotics can induce production of mitochondrial antibodies, and therefore we do all of that. Circulating immune complexes is one of the most sensitive biomarker of inflammation. This combination between IgG and antigens, and that form immune complexes by activating complement, in this case C1q, and then form complete immune complex. Usually immune complexes are removed by the Kupffer cells of the liver, but if the liver will not be able to remove that, results in inflammation in the28 and inflammation in the kidney. So with that introduction, I would like to share with you a case report of 28-year-old woman with no significant medical history other than previously had EBV infection and had some kind of fatigue which lasted 3 to 4 months. She was diagnosed with COVID-19 in August 2020, presenting with fever, cough, myalgia, anosmia, and rash, continued to experience persistent symptoms of fatigue, lethargy, dizziness, tachycardia, chest discomfort, back pain, and these symptoms fluctuating and during several weeks and appearing back and forth. So she underwent numerous investigations, blood tests, and chest X-ray, EKG, and the results were normal or near normal. Over the subsequent weeks, symptoms became debilitating, and she became bedbound and stopped working. 1 month later, showed no improvement, and patient also experienced multifaceted cognitive and musculoskeletal symptoms. Since all the investigations and imaging were unable to explain the clinical condition, and the doctor diagnosed her with possible long COVID. So the autoimmune viral trio was ordered. the IgG antibody against capsid and nucleoprotein, SARS-CoV-2, was highly elevated. IgG against herpes type 6, normal, but IgM highly elevated, meaning HHV6 played a significant role in some of those symptomatologies. Epstein-Barr virus, VCA, we find it to be elevated in about 1 to 5% of the cases, was significantly elevated. And then the next one, which is very important, early antigen. So viral reactivation and viral spread. So in this particular case, combination between SARS-CoV-2, HHV6, and EBV played a role in the symptomatology presented by, in this patient, and the doctor rightfully diagnosed this patient with long COVID. The doctor ordered also the autoimmune panel, normal ANA, but abnormal ENA, abnormal rheumatoid factor, abnormal C1q, abnormal actin antibody. So the beginning of polyautoimmunity. And again, unfortunately, when rheumatologists, immunologists will see a picture like this, they will say, these numbers are not significantly elevated, then I'll check you next year. And so therefore, my message is here, really, if the patient with this type of antibodies will not be treated properly, this patient is going to develop full-blown autoimmune disease. So yes, in this case, at least we have the luxury of testing, and we know that EBV and HHV6 are involved, therefore should be treated for that. So this is a summary of the patient and the case conclusion. Patient produced significant levels of antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, HHV6, EBV, VCA, and early antigen. ANA was elevated, rheumatoid factor, smooth muscle, and C1q immune complexes. And these results indicate that patient is in the stage of pre-autoimmunity. Now, based on those many, many articles that I read, I put together this slide that how to use or how to treat patients with long COVID based on the viral persistent, reactivation of latent viruses, viral superantigen activation of the immune system, disturbance of gut microbiota, multi-tissue damage, and autoimmunity. I'm not going to read this. I hope you have a copy of the slide and then review it for yourself. But you can see in here, there is combination of classical medications, monoclonal antibodies, and some nutritional supplements as well. So in this particular case, patient was given the triple therapy of zinc, low-dose hydroxychloroquine, and azithromycin. Patient also was given NAD+. I'll show you the articles that supports this, to suppress NF-kappa B and inflammasome activation. After 3 months of treatment with zinc, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and NAD+, the antibody levels declined significantly and patient symptoms improved as well. So here, the articles to support that. COVID-19 patients, early risk stratified treatment with zinc plus low-dose hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. And again, I'm not going to read this. The title by itself is self-explanatory. An article to support the use of NAD plus in COVID-19 and viral infections such as EBV and HHV6. So with that, final recommendation, testing for long COVID, its overlap with ME/CFS should include SARS-CoV-2 antibody, Epstein-Barr virus, human herpes type 6, you can stop there, or highly, highly recommend. I highly recommend. Combine that with autoimmune profile comprehensive, looking at ANA, ENA, double-stranded DNA, rheumatoid factor, immune complexes, actin, mitochondrial antibody. This is a new panel I put together, a combination of our autoimmune panel with viral trio. We call that long COVID panel, and the price for that is $490. And so after this slide, I'm ready to answer any question you have. And I believe also Adrian is going to talk about possible some kind of discount that Rupa is going to provide to you in order to use some of these panels I introduced to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Vojdani. Always some of my favorite presentations that you do. We had questions flooding in. And so just a quick kind of recap of what we're going to do is we're going to hop right into a Q&A with Dr. Vojdani. We'll get through as many as we can. Doctor, do you have a hard stop at the top of the hour?
No, I can stay longer.
Okay, perfect. So we will get through again just as many as we can, being conscious of time. From there, I'm going to hop right over to a demonstration of Rupa Health, show you exactly how to order the long COVID panel from Rupa. And then from there, we'll share out some details regarding some coupons on how to order these tests and save a little bit of money. So with that, y'all, let's go ahead and jump right in. And I'm going to go chronologically. Some of these might have been answered throughout the presentation, but it's always good to recap. So the first question that we got in is, if we see abnormal EBV panel, especially early antigen, should we treat it?
Yes, definitely. Early antigen positivity is one of the most important measurements, and we find it to be elevated in about 25% of the cases. And yes, there are two options. One, to strengthen the immune system. So to take back the virus to become dormant inside the B cell. That's one option. The second option is to treat with antiviral medication. Some doctors are doing the first one, some doctors are doing the second one, and some doctors are doing combination of both.
Perfect. And this kind of ties into that one, I think, is do you treat EBV IgG and HHV IgG?
Depends how elevated the IgG is. This is a work unpublished yet. I did very recently, took several hundred panels with EBV, and I looked at IgG elevation. And I found that if IgG against viral capsid antigen and EBNA, Epstein-Barr nuclear antigen, for VCA, if it's 5 times higher than reference ranges, it is very significant. For nuclear antigen, IgG, if it's higher than, I believe, 3.5 times higher than reference ranges, it is significant. So yes, first, it is important to look at VCA IgM, which is positive in 1 to 5% of the cases. Early antigen is the next one in about 20 to 25% of the cases. But VCA IgG and EBNA IgG is positive in more than 98% of the cases. So how much elevated is important, and that will be significant. That's why 5 times, higher than 5 times the reference ranges for VCA IgG and 3.5 times higher for EBV nuclear antigen is significant.
Perfect. We love the numbers. Was there a decision, and did you ever consider adding D-dimer as part of this panel?
D-dimer. Well, there are lots of things that we can add to this panel, absolutely. But for example, anti-cardiolipin antibody is very important to add. Anti-nuclear cytoplasmic antibody is very important to add. But again, the price is the major factor. Thyroid antibody, thyroid peroxidase, thyroid globulin antibody is very important. But these are the most important tests that will give us the most information about autoimmunity. yes, I'm not denying the use of D-dimer antibody as well. Yes.
Perfect. Next question we have here is, would an anti-reflex include the other immune panel? May need some
If
detail.
A and A
Yeah.
will
A
be
and A,
positive, will be positive, I really highly recommend to do the Cyrex Array 5,
Mhm.
which they look at probably antibody against more than 24 tissue antigens, and then you can see what type of autoimmunity the patient is suffering from, or what kind of, what is the tissue that the most the patient is making antibody. ANA is just a screening.
This person would like to know the significance of anti-mitochondrial antibodies.
So far in the literature, they say the mitochondrial antibody is important for detection of liver autoimmunity. But I believe also, because what we are measuring in here is an enzyme, it's called PDH, that enzyme shares homology with many chemicals. And so therefore, chemical-induced autoimmunity in patients with chemical-induced autoimmunity, also we find anti-mitochondrial antibodies.
Perfect. How do you test for spike protein?
No, we are testing antibody to spike protein, but you can also test for spike protein. The test is how, because the question is how, so I have to explain that, right, Adrian?
Yep.
So any antigen that we can measure by sandwiching it between two different antibodies. So we take a test tube, we add monoclonal antibody against spike protein. We add the patient's serum to that tube coated with monoclonal antibody against spike protein. If the patient is having spike protein in the blood or any body fluid, will bind to that monoclonal antibody, right? We wash, we get rid of all unwanted proteins, antigens. Only thing is left is spike protein bound to the monoclonal antibody. Now we come with the second antibody labeled with enzyme that binds to that spike protein, which is bound to another antibody in the test tube. And because that is labeled with an enzyme, we add substrate, and substrate with enzyme gives a color. Intensity of the color will be equivalent to level of the spike protein in this case, or if you look for antibody, the color is proportional to the amount of antibody, which we're measuring it by different method. So yes, it is called ELISA method. We can detect spike protein, but in this particular case, that in long COVID panel, we are talking about whether or not the patient made antibodies against spike protein and how elevated those antibodies are.
Perfect. Question specifically for you, Dr. Vojdani, where can these folks find a link to your articles?
Okay. First of all, through Adrian.
Yep.
We send you all these articles, Adrian.
Perfect.
If the person who asked the question will be more specific, we have, if the question is about all the articles I presented in this talk, we can provide you all the PDFs.
Perfect.
But if it's about my own article, of course, you can go online under Vojdani viruses. You can download that article immediately.
Beautiful. So Google also, if we could have your team send those over to me, I'll make sure to send them out. And just a quick note, I know that we are coming up on the time for the schedule. We'll continue to answer questions, but if you do have to jump, no worries. We are recording this and we'll distribute out the recording along with the links to the articles and coupon details as well at some point next week. So appreciate you all coming. Let's jumping right back into it. Is there any connection between HPV and polymyalgia rheumatica?
I didn't read the package insert of HPV vaccines. But I believe that if I guess yes, the answer is yes, but I have to read the package insert. In every package insert that provided by the manufacturers, you can find that information about what type of autoimmunities that HPV or SARS-CoV-2 and others contribute to. But I'm not sure 100%. We have to look at the package insert in order to be sure 100%.
Awesome. And yeah, thanks everybody who has to jump. We appreciate you so much for joining. So this is more of a scenario with a patient after COVID. They're left with a lot of gut distress, pain, constipation, and all symptoms on and off. What would your treatment be in this circumstance?
Okay. I think in this particular case, most probably the patient is having the virus or remnants of the virus in the GI tract. Mm-hmm. If possible, to test stool for presence of spike and nucleoprotein of SARS-CoV-2 will give us the answer.
Interesting.
Okay, that's as far as testing, because blood test is not going to detect that. And in that patient, I'm sure the patient is going to have leaky gut. The patient definitely should be treated for leaky gut and support for leaky gut to support that patient for integrity of the immune system in the gut. And so I think many practitioners have more information about that than me, which I'm a scientist.
Yep, absolutely. And almost going along with the same theme of gut here, any thoughts on H. pylori post-COVID?
I think the reappearance or reinfection by H. pylori is possible after COVID, and especially in the case of long COVID. But again, we should not forget that depending from country to country, if you look at H. pylori, almost all of us, we have H. pylori in our GI tract. Mm-hmm. But I think the analogy will be maybe to EBV or HHV6. All of us, we carry H. pylori. But something happened to our gut immune system, whether it's stress, nutrition, diet, and so forth, our lifestyle, somehow that H. pylori become reactivated and expresses a new antigen, which is an enzyme which didn't carry before. And it is that enzyme which is we make antibody against, and the antibody against that is detected in the blood. So the best way is to look whether or not the patient is making high levels of antibodies against H. pylori. And if that's the case, then we can support that H. pylori contributed to long COVID in that patient.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. Is this testing and detection process beneficial to apply to the variants as well, or just specifically SARS-CoV-2 with long COVID?
The testing is about SARS-CoV-2, but please do not forget that spike protein has about, I think, 560 or close to 600 amino acids, okay? The new variants, 1 or 2, or maximum 5 amino acid change. So imagine you have a necklace with 600 beads of different colors. Only 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 maximum changed. But as far as antigenicity, still is an antigen which we make antibody, and antibody that we detect against SARS-CoV-2, the original SARS-CoV-2, also react with the new variants as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I understand that long COVID can take a few months to manifest post-acute COVID. How long might it take for autoimmunity to develop?
That's a fantastic question. There is an article that was published in Journal of Autoimmunity about 5 years ago. they looked at different autoimmune disorders. Some of them, they said it takes 3 years. Some of them 7 years. Example, I think was celiac disease, 7 years. Type 1 diabetes, 10 years. And primary biliary cirrhosis, 18 years. Oh. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that you asked that question. There is a window of opportunity to detect pre-autoimmunity between 3 to 18 years. And so therefore, when your patient is having slight elevation in antibodies such as ANA, ENA, double-stranded DNA, immune complex, actin, mitochondria, please take that seriously because you can prevent autoimmune disease in next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years.
Awesome. So we have time for a few more questions. So this is a bit more of a scenario as well. So a patient who had tonsillar sarcoma from HPV 2 years ago, never had conventional treatment, just natural and herbal treatments. So can the HPV be eradicated so the risk of cancer is less and does not come back? What tests can be done to surveil the cancer?
Oh, to survey the cancer, I think only histology as far as to survey the cancer. But what tests to be done to see whether or not HPV, right?
Yeah.
Being eradicated, then you have to do PCR for HPV. And what type of HPV? Is it HPV 16, 18? There are many, many variations of HPV. But to detect cancer or no cancer, you have to do biopsy and do histology.
Perfect. Can you please comment on why a patient would experience improvement in long COVID symptoms after a booster vaccination? Could this improvement be expected with a continued development of updated strain-specific vaccinations?
Wow, that's a different and difficult question that I wasn't aware that vaccination can improve the long COVID. I thought vaccination may contribute to the worsening of long COVID. So that's my opinion. And so here we have two different opinions. And I'll be very happy to have conversation with the person who asked the question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of these types of conversations is you get to express those opinions as well. Let's see here. So this one might need a little bit more context to it. Let's hop down to one here. Any difference seen whether a patient is vaccinated again or COVID infection post-vaccination versus COVID infection in person who is not vaccinated?
At this level, no, it's very difficult. No, we cannot differentiate between that. But there are some publications about PEG, polyethylene glycol. The vaccine is the mRNA mixed with polyethylene glycol, and I think in some cases also adding phosphatidylcholine. Okay, so there are some publications that patients may make antibody against PEG, and that may differentiate. But the problem is that if someone is having diabetes and getting insulin incorporated in PEG, also they're going to make antibodies. So it's very difficult to differentiate between the two.
Perfect. And let's see if we got one more question. And then from there, folks, we'll have to wrap it up, hop into a little bit of demonstration about Rupa Health. And so final question, let's see here. Are nuclear antibodies the cause of tissue breakdown or the effect of tissue breakdown, i.e. cleanup operation?
I think it's well, first of all, let's go back and see why our cells get disrupted, break down, and then the nuclear antigen, extractable nuclear antigen get released, and we make antibody against that. Isn't that we should have tolerance mechanism in place, that we should not react even to our nuclear material, including ANA and ENA? So it seems that chemicals, or in this case, particular case, remember, the virus become reactivated and divides. And finally, there are so many viruses inside, so many EBV and HHV6 are inside the cell goes through apoptosis. But it is at that level, it seems that the virus also cause DNA methylation, changing in the structure of our own nuclear proteins, and therefore our cells go after our own nuclear antigens and we make antibody against that. So yes, it seems that viruses and other environmental factors contribute to the change of self-antigens, and therefore the body cannot differentiate between self versus non-self, and therefore goes after them and makes antibody.
Amazing. Dr. V, thank you so much for your time today. Always so much of a pleasure. We appreciate you so much for joining us in so many different capacities here at Rupa Health. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, the final thought is really because we made this panel as long COVID panel, Joel has to send you this with the pricing, so to include it in the menu.
Yes.
In your menu, so the practitioners will be able to order this test.
Perfect. Yeah, and I actually just 2
pricing.
seconds ago reached out to my team to make sure that we do get that added. So while it's not in our catalog yet, we'll be sure to add that over the next few days. And so once this recording is sent out, along with the details of a potential coupon, perhaps, we'll have that in our catalog. Everyone joining will get access to that as well. Yeah. Is there anything else, Dr. V? Or otherwise,
that's it. I really appreciate all of you participated in this class, and hope that you'll use the information in your clinic.
Amazing. Dr. Vojdani, again, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Awesome. You're welcome to hop off. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to transition over to a quick demonstration of Rupa Health, and I'm going to show you exactly how to order tests from immunosciences. And so while this long COVID panel isn't in our catalog just yet, I was actually able to create it directly on Rupa Health, minus one of the little tests, but we'll get that added ASAP. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we can jump right into it. So for those of you who may be joining us for the first time on one of these live classes, let's talk a little bit about who Rupa Health is, what we do, and why do we do what we do. Because I feel like a little bit of a backstory is really important to understand and provide context. So Rupa Health is a functional medicine lab platform. We're designed with the goal in mind of helping bring root cause medicine to the world. And we do that in a handful of ways. You're actually a big part of it right now in these conversations with Dr. Vojdani, and that's in education. So what we've done here at Rupa Health is we've created a platform that partners with over 30 different labs, of course, including immunosciences and a handful of others, to give you a one-stop shop. And so no longer do you have to go and set up, 5, 6, 7 different accounts with all the labs that you want to order your tests from. You're able to set up one account with Rupa Health and get access to over 3,000 different labs in one place. Not only is it a one-stop shop to order all your tests, but we also want to provide you a one-stop shop to learn about all your tests. So the conversation today with Dr. Vojdani in immunosciences is just a small little snippet of what we produce here. As you can see, what I'm doing here is I've navigated to our Learn About Labs tab within the Rupa Health platform. You can see, so not only do we do these live classes, but we also do more in-depth boot camps. Dr. Vojdani is also involved with a boot camp that we're doing right now with Dr. Jeffrey Bland, as well as his son, other Dr. Vojdani. And so you can join that live as well. I see what's upcoming, including not just those, but also live classes. So whether you want to do a more in-depth paid option with a boot camp, we also offer these free live classes on a weekly basis. Beyond live classes and boot camps, we also host a magazine. We have a podcast. So again, more than just a place where you can order all your tests in one spot, a place where you can come and learn as well. Whether you've been in functional medicine for 20 years or 2 months, right? Understanding that this field is completely expanding and constantly growing and iterating, it can be a bit overwhelming. And so having one single place to go with Rupa Health is what we're looking to do here. What I'm going to do is actually just show you really quick how simple it is to place an order on Rupa Health. So within this main Rupa Health dashboard is where you're able to go. You can start an order by pressing the button that says start an order. And all we need is the patient's first name, last name, and email address. All I do is type in that patient's information. We'll collect everything else directly from the patient to complete the order. From there, you're in your order screen here, and I can do things like creating custom bundles. Custom bundles are sets of tests from a combination of any lab that I want to order from. So if I want to create that long COVID panel, again, this will be added into our catalog over the next few days. but I just made it on the fly here. You can see that those tests are all in that bundle. And if that's it, I can click send a patient. But maybe I want to do a stool test and maybe find some of those spike proteins or maybe some of that H. pylori that we were touching on a moment ago. I can go ahead and order a GI map from DSL or really any one of the other partners. Again, having all of your labs in one place. From there, all I do is click send a patient and that's it. From there, we'll go ahead and reach out to the patient. We'll collect all the necessary information to complete the order. You have the option of either paying for the tests yourself, or we can bill the patient directly. We offer wholesale practitioner pricing, which means the same price that you would get having an account directly with the labs. That's the same price that we offer here at Rupa. Not only that, but it's potentially saving your patients money as well. So if I go back and go to the example for the GI map, right? Generally, if you were having your patient pay for this test directly to the lab, your patient will be upcharged, sometimes tens, sometimes hundreds of dollars, depending on the test. And so through Rupa Health, they're saving money by getting that patient wholesale practitioner price. You can add your own fee to it, but let me talk about how we generate our revenue. It's very simple. We charge a 7% processing and ordering fee on each order, and that's paid for by whoever pays for the test. So if you're having us manage billing directly with the patients, then your patients will pay that 7%. In that scenario, Rupa Health is free for you. Rupa is free to sign up for. There's no contract. There's no minimum spend. There's no subscription fee that you're paying. This 7% is how we generate our revenue. So if you're having us, again, bill the patient, which is how the majority of our practitioners and clinics prefer it, because it's one less thing off your plate, then you're never going to pay anything to Rupa. Not only that, but we'll also handle the whole patient experience as well. So not only will we handle billing with the patient, but we'll also drop ship the kits to the patients. We'll handle any patient support. So if your patient does have any questions on how to take the test, they'll reach out to our team. We have a full patient support staff on hand, as well as practitioner support. So if you have any questions, you have somebody to reach out to also. We'll handle any specimen issues, walk them through how to fill out the requisition form. And if there is a blood draw that's required with the test, we can help coordinate that phlebotomy as well. We'll send over all the necessary resources to your patient to allow them to schedule that blood test, that blood draw. But if you have a preferred phlebotomist that you want your patient to go see, you can go ahead and add that information in there as well, and we'll provide that to your patients. From there, we'll follow up with the patients, and then you're notified as the results come in. So once those results come in, you just hop right back into your Rupa Health dashboard. You're able to view everything straight away, right within one screen. So again, you no longer have to go to multiple different lab logins to place your orders, but also you don't have to go there to manage your results as well. Everything will be flowing directly in here. From there, I can just chop in. I can see 2 out of 3 of my results are in. I can download those results. I can send them to my patients. I can even schedule a clinical consultation. So if I do need some assistance interpreting those results, I have access to be able to schedule time with a clinician from the lab that I order the test from. We also have some pretty cool features, y'all. Result summaries. So you're able to have your results imported into this result summaries field. From there, you can add biomarker visualizations. You can add next steps. You can create a treatment plan. This is all patient facing. And so the next iteration of this will be allowing you to add your own logo to it. There's some really cool functions here at Rupa Health that I likely won't have the time to go over through this next couple minutes here. But the beauty of Rupa Health, again, is it's free, right? So you can hop in, play around, and if you do have any questions, I'll be available to help answer those for you. You're able to track all of your orders again, right? Results in, what orders are in progress, and any drafts that you've previously created. You can hop into your settings and play around as well. So we also integrate with a couple of EHRs. So if there is an EHR that you want your results to flow directly into, there's a chance that we work with them. And so making things even more streamlined is just having those results imported directly into that patient file automatically. Huge value there. Team members. If you are a solo practitioner or work in a multi-practitioner clinic with a bunch of admins, right? Depending on the size, independent of the size, rather, of your working environment, we can work with you, right? And so you can add team members to this. You can have multiple practitioners on a single account just to really kind of streamline and bring everything all under one roof. That is the goal here. Now, a question that I commonly get is, hey, do I have to be a licensed practitioner to order these tests? If you had asked me that 6 months ago, the answer would be yes. However, we do have a program called Physician Services. And so if you are a practitioner whose licenses may limit your ability to order certain testing, you have the ability to apply for that program. What that will do is we'll work with and we'll partner you with a licensed physician to be able to order those tests for your patient on your behalf. Now, if you have any questions on that, I'm going to put up my contact information here shortly, and you can go ahead and reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to schedule time to walk through a little bit more detail on that. But really, to kind of tie a bow on Rupa Health, our mission here is to bring root cause medicine to the world, right? And in order to do that, we have to alleviate a lot of the pain points that are already in existence with lab testing specifically. Lab testing is a very manual process and it takes a lot of time. And so with Rupa Health, our goal is to save you time on those required admin hours and manual work and support. And so you can free up your time to see more patients, help your patients get access to these tests. Your patients can pay not only just with credit or debit, but they can pay with HSA, FSA. We can set up a payment plan. And so really our goal is access, right? Access and time saving. So, if you do have any questions, would love to reach out and communicate and set up some time with you. My name is Adrian. I'm the head of practitioner partnerships here at Rupa Health. And so my goal here is to ensure that when you are setting up Rupa Health or interested in even setting up an account, that we have a conversation and that you are set up for success. And so with that, I'm going to hop into the Q&A. Maybe there were some questions that came in. Do I work with Nation One Labs? We don't currently work with Nation One Labs. However, if there's a specific test that you're interested in, more than happy to kind of talk to you about maybe some alternative tests that we have. Because again, we work with over 30 different labs, and let me actually show you that over 30 different labs and over 3,000 different tests. So if I hop into the lab test catalog, I can browse by test. I can search by biomarker. I can see all the different companies that we work with here. We even have lab test comparison tools. So if there's 5 different GI tests that you're interested in seeing, you can put those side by side and get all the raw data from biomarkers to cost to turnaround times to sample collection instructions, sample reports. It's all available for you. Is Rupa relevant to people in the UK? Unfortunately, not yet. We are looking for international expansion in the future. Unfortunately, right now, there's no timeline on it, but that's not to say that it won't be available down the line. Yeah, the lab test comparison tool. I can actually show you. Let's take a look at it. So I can happen to learn about labs. I can also customize it, but I'm going to show you one of the preset ones we have. Let's jump into food sensitivity testing. Right. Food sensitivity testing. We have a lot of options, as you can see here, but just to give you an idea, right? Here's what that comparison tool looks like. It'll give you all the prices, and this goes vertically. Sample type, you can view the collection reports, if it requires a phlebotomy or not, the methods used for collection or processing. You have instructions here, turnaround times, then down below, what exactly is this testing for? So this is one-of-a-kind tools. We have a lot of one-of-a-kind tools on our platform, and really the reason for that is, or the reason we're able to have that is that we have amazing lab partners and we have it all in one place. So what you're seeing today is by no means the finished product. We're constantly, it seems like almost on a weekly basis, creating new tools for our practitioners. And so, free to sign up for. Absolutely highly recommend. If you do have any questions, here's my contact again. But thank you so much for joining, everyone. We do these every week. So if you are interested in joining, would love to see you all again. I know I always see some familiar faces and I appreciate you. The comparison is relatively new, Shelly. It came out within the last, I think, like 3-4 months or so. One of my favorite tools, honestly. It's from a legal standpoint, we can't provide medical advice here at Rupa Health, right? And so what we can do is provide all the tools to the practitioners to allow them to make those decisions with education, right? And so by creating tools like live classes, magazine articles, comparison tools, right? We're putting the power in your hands to be able to, make those decisions that are best for you and your patients. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Kathy, yes, let me have somebody reach out to you. And we can get that going for you. Super excited to be working with you all. Again, let me know if you need anything. And if anything else, come to another live class. They're fun. I promise. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.